Well, welcome to the IAOMT meeting. It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce three doctors, Dr. Dave Warwick, Dr. Mathew Young, and Dr. Joe Palmer, who will be discussing mercury vapor and mercury particulate exposure in the dental operatory during removal of mercury silver fillings. Dr. Dave Warwick.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Yes, thank you all. It's my pleasure to be up here, and it was so nice to see so many new accredited members. I think as a group, one of our main goals is to get rid of the use of mercury in dentistry, and you can do this a number of ways. I think that this presentation might be one of the biggest keys to getting rid of amalgam, and that's by offering the public our perspective on how to protect yourself when you remove these things. Because once you see what you have to do, there's going to be large questions and discussion and conversation. There's other ways that you can move this battle, if you want to call it, or this conversation towards a world that doesn't use, one of the most toxic substances in the world in people's mouths. That's what IAOMT is so great about. We're on every front. We're coming in from every prong. We're taking things like political movements. We're funding the FDA's initiative to, put out or shut up. We've funded something I participated in Brazil, which is the TAP program. The TAP program was a technical assistance program. Dave Simone, he was part of that. Martha Facial, I don't know if they're here yet. They should be standing up. But anyway, we went into Brazil. We taught at 4 different lectures, and we made them aware of some of the dangers they didn't realize. And right now, there's legislation. This is only a year after we went in there. There's legislation that has passed the first commission unanimously to end the use of amalgam in Brazil. It only has to go through 2 more commissions, and then the president's acceptance, and it's law. They have already outlined penalties for using it. The dentist journals down there are saying bye-bye amalgam. And so these kinds of initiatives that this academy are behind are working. It's something that's slow, but it's something that you have to have some patience, but keep talking. It's rolling this conversation over and over. It gets to be a bigger and bigger snowball, and you will see an end of amalgam use. You will see it. So this presentation is going to be cool because it's going to just show you how to protect yourself and your staff and your patients from some unlikely sources of mercury, and that's a good thing, obviously. And once you see what we have to do to protect, and people see what you have to protect, there's going to be a conversation about this that's going to help us a lot. This is a funny little thing Maddie put in here. When the herd is all running towards a cliff, the one running in the opposite direction seems crazy. Well, we're not buffalo. We're the guys going the other way. So our first of 2 important questions is, why do we need to remove amalgam? In the circles of dentistry beyond this academy, there's a lot of people that will, criticize removing not serviceable amalgam. But we need to answer that, because then it gives us a scope of what population needs this information. And we're going to find that out. We're also going to find out or ask ourselves, how is mercury vapor absorbed? So why do we need to remove amalgam? Failed fillings, obvious things, secondary caries, fractured teeth, fixed or removable prosthetic preparations. We've got endodontic access, aesthetic concerns, surgical sectioning, health issues, occlusal adjustments, dental training in the laboratory when you're a student, metallic tastes in patients, allergies. So you have all of those things that make it necessary to drill on this material, to remove them. Okay, that's important. The second thing is, how is mercury vapor absorbed? People are always concerned about the inhalation aspect of it, but as much so this gives us an answer of what we have to protect. So we have to protect the things and the routes of where the mercury vapor is absorbed. And there's 2 answers to that. Inhalation points, which is common and is sort of at the forefront of this subject. But the truth is, it's also in the skin. So any bare skin is going to be vulnerable to any source of mercury. And in fact, because of the substances, so inhalation means it's a vapor, which is a gas. So within occupational rules, there's actually levels that you can't go over in most occupational jurisdictions as far as the mercury concentration in the air. But for other sources of mercury, such as those that are going to be going through the skin must be protected all the time from any possible mercury exposure. So that's key to what we're going to be talking about. So who needs this information? Everybody. It's not just IAOMT, it's everybody. And we want you to share this PowerPoint with everybody. It's a simple little PowerPoint, but all dentists should understand what this is all about so that everybody can protect themselves. So it's not just for us, it's the students, it's the dental schools, it's personnel, and it's the patients. So our hypothesis was quantifying the mercury vapor generated by particulate and determining how far that particulate may travel from the operative site during amalgam removal may uncover an underappreciated source of mercury exposure to the patients, the staff, the dental student, professors, and the environment. So essentially what that means is when you're in the operatory and you're drilling out the mercury filling, there's this scattering of particles. And we wanted to know where they went and what effect they had, if any. There's a reason why we made up this hypothesis, and that was from confounding results of a paper by this lovely woman. That's my daughter, Robin Warwick, O'Connor, Lamy. They published a paper when they were in their 3rd and 4th year of dental school at University of Alberta in Canada. And the setup on the actual study was to discover what engineering controls prevented what. So it was purely a mercury vapor study. And what they did is they drilled out 21 amalgams using no water, no suction. They did 21 using just suction and 21 using both controls. And they measured at the inhalation point of the operator the mercury vapor and recorded all of those. And so this is their results. So you have on the note, and it's not unsurprising. This is a log axis, the y-axis. So without water and suction, we've got a tremendous amount. These lines here are mercury vapor limits. This is never to be exceeded, and this is never to be exceeded over an 8-hour period. This is in Alberta. EPA and OSHA's are very similar to that. So we saw the no water and suction. We thought, well, that makes sense. That's high. That's no good. All the things we've been preaching. Suction only no water, sorry, obviously reduced. The 66%, this is a candlestick graph, so 60% of the numbers fell in this thing. But we had this range where, in fact, the mercury vapor was more elevated in the suction only. And that got us to thinking why the heck that is. That was a confounding thing. It didn't make sense. And so why is the peak reading higher with suction than without? That was our question. So when we took a look at basically the sketches, these are sketches that were made for the study. This is how they did that. And so the Jerome was used to measure the vapor coming off the working surface. So we're not measuring particulate, but we're just measuring the vapor. And so this is the setup with the suction person. So with the suction person in, what we thought might be happening is when they drill, the particles were landing on the sleeve of this person here and being picked up by the actual Jerome. So then we thought, if that particulate can generate that kind of increased reading, then we ought to be looking at where those particles are going and what they actually read. So that's what we did. That's what we thought. This basically tells me everything that I just said. So we went ahead and we found 2 studies on the subject that are absolutely, I mean, you can take pictures. This is the one you want to take pictures of. Everybody should read these 2 articles. They're old. You notice Nemo was 1990 and Richardson, one of our scientific board members, 2003. Don't read just the abstract. Read the whole thing. There's incredible information here that justifies everything that we're saying here. So we looked at what they taught, and we said, well, we need 2 parts of this investigation. We're going to determine the number or the potential distance that those particles fly when we're drilling it out. And we used, by the way, all controls on that we know of. We use water, suction, auxiliary suction like the IQ Air, rubber dam, and everything we could find to reduce the fly of these things. And the other thing we wanted to figure out is how much mercury vapor is produced by a certain mass of this particulate that was being generated. And we measured both wet and dry cut for that particular part of it. So that was basically our setup. And so I am going to turn you over to Matt Young, who also is the Gary Strong Award. So that's pretty good. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. This is one reason why I like. Am I working? Yeah. This is one reason why I like Facebook on my lunch hour. Yeah. I found this on Facebook, and there's so many good pictures about dentists on Facebook. I just couldn't resist it. So again, we're talking about not just the vapor that you're breathing when you're cutting out amalgam. It's this shower of particulate. If you could actually see it in real time, you would see that it not only goes on the patient's chest, but it works its way all the way down to the patient's knees and pretty much on the floor all the way around the room. And under a scanning electron microscope, it depends upon basically what you're using to take your amalgams out with. If you're using a diamond, you're going to be abrading the surface as you cut it. If you're using a carbide to cut it out, you'll have a totally different topography to the shape. So we wanted to compare wet versus the dry. The dry allows for direct exposure for the mercury, because as this stuff escapes the mercury from the solid suspension that the amalgam actually is, then the dry just makes common sense that it's going to have a lot more mercury coming off of it. The wet not only has a meniscus, if it's really wet, but it's also going to cool down those particles, which lowers the amount of mercury that comes off the amalgam particulate. So 2 types of collections were done, the wet and the dry. Now we used all 7 of the IAOMT safety protocols, the rubber dam, high-speed suction, the cleanup, and also the ionizer. In the area where we had enough surface area to sample, we used a 10 by 10 square centimeter area, and you'll see a picture of that here in just a minute. And then Dave had his own little custom sampling thing that you'll see here in a moment, because he also wanted to sample the dentist arm and the assistant's arm to see how much of a difference there was. So this is Dave set up in his clinic, and we all use the same measuring machine that you'll see here in a minute. This is at Joe's office down in South Carolina. We had a mannequin set up with all 7 controls turned on, and then we sampled the face mask that you can see here. So the size of the sample was exactly the same. The collection process was exactly the same. So we tried to standardize how we determined where the particulate was going. Then after all the samples were collected, we sent it to Agate Labs, which is one of the main heavy metal sampling labs up in Calgary. And we got some samples here to show you. Now the first one is, we did 7 samples. Here's the different locations, the assistant's respirator, the assistant's chest. Since I'm left-handed, Joe's left knee was closest to me, so we sampled the left knee to see how much particulate fell down, both sides of the patient's chest, down to the abdomen, and then all the way down to the knee. So these were with all the IAOMT controls turned on, and guess what? The left side of the chest had the highest amount of particulate. When we went down to just using water and suction, this is what you get in 99.9% of all the dentist offices around the world with just your suction and your water turned on. So these were the amalgams that were on the right side of the mouth. And then with me being left-handed, I moved the handpiece from the right side of the mouth over to the left. And guess what? Now my wrist is not in the way, so the particulate can travel more freely away from where we were drilling the fillings out. So just look at the difference between the right and the left. I think this makes a difference in our own clinics when we're working back home again now. If you're left and right-handed, you're going to be protecting that particulate from flying on the opposite side of where you're left or right-handed. Does that make sense to everybody? Then these were the samples that Dave did. He did a control with no mercury exposure at all. The wrist and forearm, and the assistant's wrist and forearm. and then look at how, as you get closer and closer to the mouth, the patient forehead and around the patient nose. So this is another good reason when you see some of these protective engineering controls later on, you got to cover the patient's skin. The rubber dam just does not do enough because it's going to travel up to the nose, it's going to be on the chin. Anywhere where there's naked skin, you run the risk of having particulate. So now we're going to see some data. So we took mercury vapor readings from 4 samples that were cut dry, and then 7 samples that were cut wet. And then the intake of the analyzer was used to mimic what would happen to skin. So I tried to figure out a way, how could I get my mercury analyzer the same distance from the sample every single time, same conditions. So we kept the air conditioning in the office set at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes a big difference. And I wiped the head of the dental drill off after several amalgams were removed, and I used my good old dental surveyor that's been collecting dust for 32 years in my closet with some twist ties, and lo and behold, we could standardize the temperature and the location of how the sampling was done. So this kind of shows you, I basically just took a plain 2x2 gauze and I only wiped off the particulate that was on the head of the drill. That's it. After it was sampled, then it went into the test tube and shipped up to Agate Labs. Now, some of the new people that are here who've never seen this equipment before, there's basically 2 different ways to measure mercury in your office. The first one is really simple, relatively inexpensive. You can get one of these for, what, Dave, $3,000 or $4,000. It's called a Jerome Mercury Analyzer. This one happened to have automatic sampling system built into it. You can plug on the button, sample the every 2 minutes, and you have an alarm that'll go off if you get above 50 or 100, whatever you want. There's a real thin film of gold foil in here, and the machine will suck in some air for about a 2-minute exposure. The gold foil has a charge to it that allows the mercury atoms to stick to it, and then a computer pulses electric pulse through the machine, and the change in the conductivity of the gold foil goes through an algorithm that tells you how much mercury's in the air, and then you get a little reading here. This particular one, I traded it in 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember the model number, but you can hook a printer up to this. So if you want to type in your patient's name, make it a part of the permanent record, it's possible to do that with this simple machine. It's really easy. And if you decide to buy one, the people will be happy to train you on how to do it. The machine I have in my office now, I don't have a picture of it because I ran out of slides here for my part, but it's a laser, and the mercury atoms go through the laser on the spectrophotometer, and it has a screen on the other side that notices a decrease in the concentration of the intensity of the laser, so then that tells you how much is in the air. This will go down to 3 micrograms per cubic meter, and the spectrophotometer will go down to 100 nanograms. So it's pretty low amount. For future reference, these are the different limits which you're allowed to have in your office. 100 micrograms is a one-time exposure. So every time your girls or your guys pop open the back of your dental chairs where the little particulate is in that trap, you're probably breathing between 400 and 600 micrograms if you don't have your air filter turned on. 50 is over an 8-hour day, and then 100 is the EPA. This is if you're in elementary school and a student breaks a mercury thermometer and it spills on the floor. As soon as it gets above 10, the whole school has to be evacuated. And then before the kids can come back into school again, that number has to get down to 1. So very, very low amount. So these are the graphs that we get off the spectrophotometer. We get a reading every single second. This can be saved as an Excel program, and so these are the spreadsheets that Dave so skillfully put together for us. So over here you can see the different masses of the collections that were taken. Now bear in mind, when you saw the patient bib reading, when it gets above 1,500, 1,600, that's a whole lot more than this. This is just off the head of the drill. So you can see for each color, this is a linear scale on this side. This is time in seconds here. The 100, everything above this, your employees are breathing more than they're supposed to, according to OSHA. Okay? So in these particular cases, you can see how long everything stays above the OSHA limits. So then Dave took the scale on the y-axis and made it logarithmic, and then increase the time for us so we can see about how long for these 4 samples that it stayed above 100. Now, OSHA protects the employees, but EPA protects the patient and the dentist. So you have to use that ATSDR level at the 10 when you talk the legality of what the dentist and the patient's supposed to be exposed to. So now again, this combines the wet and the dry together. Oh, I'm sorry, just wet. Sorry, thanks, Dave. So this just stretches that out over a longer period of time. Again, here's your OSHA limit here. Here's your 8-hour time limit here at 50, and your ATSDR is even below that. So these levels tend to hover for a long period of time. They drop at first, and then for several of these samples, it just stays very toxic for a long period of time. Okay, now we got both of them, right? Okay, log of the same thing. So we're spreading the time out over a longer period of time, and then this is logarithmic. So this kind of gives you an idea when you look at it over a longer period of time. So it takes a long time for these little particles to outguess the mercury. So later on when we're done, if you guys have some more questions or if you want to come up to any of us at the end of the day, we'll be happy to answer these questions. So I want to give the microphone over to Dr. Joe Palmer. The name of his practice is Palmer Distinctive Dentistry, and you just don't believe the safety protocol that he has. So here he is.
Thank you. Mic me up. Thank you. Now, I did not shoot the lion. Okay, that was not me. I also didn't come up with our space age protocol for protection. When we were talking about doing this study, we did it in my office simply because I was moving out of that office. And we knew we were going to contaminate the hell out of that office. Because we were going to take 8 sessions, I think it was 8 sessions, where we cut out 8 amalgams. And we started with all our controls on. We took one control off at a time, engineering control off. So what I mean is we had everything on, the tack there. We never took the rubber dam off. We had water suction, cleanup. What am I leaving off? Oh, and our auxiliary suctions and those kind of things. We took one off at a time. Every time we took one off, we knew that our vapor that we were measuring right at our shoulders, and we knew that the vapor and particulate, well, only we could monitor live was vapor. So we didn't know what these other things were doing. We tested the same way every time. But after we saw our results, every time we took a control off, numbers went up. Now, when we had all our controls on, we were better than just water and suction that most dentists have, but we had huge peaks in that vapor. And when we looked at the particulate, you couldn't believe how the particulate matter started going up. So then we realized we were spreading this stuff on, it was staying there. So we tried to figure out, and then we demonstrated in later tests how much that particulate actually off-gasses. So this looks scary. It doesn't look much better when we got all the stuff on. Now, we started off, for the study, Maddie found these Tyvek suits for us to wear. And I haven't even looked at these slides, so we'll have to see what we got coming up. But we've since found out and done some other studies that Tyvek may not be the best material. But we confirmed our hypothesis that we need better barriers. We need better protection for ourselves, our team, and our patients. We figured out that stuff can travel over 1/2 meter in Canadian, and that's about down to the knees in English. From the operative site, and is gassing off significant mercury vapor for several hours, as Maddie just showed you. So what are the implications regarding handling all these contaminated sundries and instruments? How do we deal with that? We haven't got all those questions answered, but we'll give you some ideas how to do that. So we have individually and collectively tried to come up with these techniques and protocols. We have submitted them to the Academy, and the Academy has put their stamp of approval on the extra barrier protection we're asking you to start doing. There was a little controversy over that, but with the science, it's kind of hard to argue that you shouldn't do it. So this is what we're starting to teach in the fundamentals course. It is approved by the Academy. Basically, cover up everything you can. Immediately after you finish your removal, bag that contaminated materials and separate it from your regular trash, but get it outside your office or store it in some kind of sealed container. But it's going to be a lot of material. It's going to be hard to store inside the office till you get this stuff picked up. Only expose your instruments that you're going to use during removal. Cover everything else up. You need a mirror, maybe an Explorer, when you're going to be taking this stuff out. So try to protect everything else so you don't have to wipe it down and you can use it. You're going to rinse or replace any reusable instruments after removal. We use the Mercury wipes, which are a kind of a sulfur-containing wipe that helps wipe off the mercury and neutralize the mercury vapor. You have to use some kind of mercury-rated mask that covers the nose and the mouth. You don't want to be breathing the room air. Dave uses one that's an ear loop that's designed, it is an ear loop, and he puts a shield over it. Others of us, of course, wear the respirator mask, which some of you probably have, and then there's also a full face mask you can use. Your covering should be water resistant. Polyethylene backed bibs or drapes, like surgical drapes, work well. If you're using face shields, you can dispose of them or have some that you can clean off. They should be cleaned with Mercury wipes or an HGX solution that can clean those. We found that double nitrile gloves with HGX on them is the best protection for gloves and for your hands. And that a non-latex rubber dam or vinyl dam coated with HGX works better to stop the mercury vapor from coming through. And then you want to dispose everything outside or things that can go into a sealed recycling container inside. It needs to be sealed up. So here's what the setup looks like. And it can look with different materials you can use, but you can see, all you see is teeth. You don't see any skin. It's totally covered up. You should look the same way. This is Dave's office. He's got drapes on. He's got surgical gowns on. His head's covered. He's got a face shield. He has a mercury mask under a regular mask here. Gloves, no skin showing. And this is disposing of that material bagged up in a separate container that he has outside for it. And this is probably our biggest problem, because we really don't, in the States, we don't want to tell them we're doing this, because right now there's nowhere to put it. I don't know what they're going to do with it. So this is something we still have to do. All right, this is kind of how Maddie and I do it. We do use Tyvek suits. They're the worst material as far as permeability to vapor, and we'll show you that in a minute. But they do have there's the coveralls. They cover everything. And because they breathe, they're a little more comfortable. Now, when Maddie told me that I was going to be wearing these things for 8 hours while we did that study, I go, Maddie, come on, we don't really need to do that. He said, oh yeah, I think we're going to need to do that. Oh boy, was he right. Because the particulate was just piling up on my leg. It would have been there all day long. If your assistant was there, or is there now, and you do a couple of procedures in a row, there's nothing making that particulate go away between procedures. So we showed like one procedure, then add 2, 3, 4, 5 on it over the course of a day. You can imagine how much particulate might be getting on your assistant's leg and your leg. So here's the patient. Somewhere in all that, there's a tooth that you work on. You don't see the patient. The patient's totally covered up. So these are Tyvek gowns with gloves and wrists. Make sure the skin's not showing. The face is protected. The orange filters that have particulate covers also on them. So just like our Comfo mask. The only disadvantage of these masks, I like them because they're more comfortable, but you cannot wear your loops with them. You can adapt them for corrective lenses, but there's no way to get your loops in there. And all the skin's protected again. We found that Mercury X from Acton, HGX cream, really helps decrease the permeability of vapor through our vinyl material and through our gloves. So, I mean, I coat that on my hands, you know, before I put the gloves on, and then we rub some on the vinyl material, and it really cuts down. It sticks, the particulate sticks better to it, but it also decreases the permeability of that material. We use Mercon wipes, or you can create a solution with the HGX in a spray bottle. We wipe down our hand pieces, all other hard surfaces that aren't covered up. As soon as mercury removal is over, we keep a solution in the ultrasonic to try to hold down the vapor coming out of the ultrasonic. And it does reduce the vapor release of mercury when you're running your ultrasonic. We surprisingly found that the cleanup, which is our little suction device with the little chamber you kind of work through, because a lot of people don't like using the cleanup, a little hard to see through, and everybody say, well, the people that don't like it say, well, it doesn't work. Well, we found out it works really well. There was a big increase in particulate spread when we removed the cleanup from our protocol. Again, anything you can recycle, small enough particles, go in a recycle bin. And always protect yourself from vapor when you open up that bin or working with that. Girls or whoever's doing it, you must have a mask on and gloves. So when you're cleaning the traps and the vinyl products, some of the glove material all goes into that trap, and the reusable traps go in there to be recycled. So, our conclusions were that particulate and vapor control is a journey and not a destination. We're asking you to work with integrity. Now that you know that this is happening, it'd be kind of hard not to go back and protect yourselves and your patients. Communicate with patients about the benefit of why we're using this. You know, you've got a patient that you did it an old way and now you're adding this. Tell them you've learned new science. You're just adding an extra degree of protection. We'd like you to read and study the IAOMT safety protocols and use as many of them as you can, and they will be posted. Hopefully they'll be posted on our website by next week, and I intend to have them emailed to all of our members so everybody will have them. Strongly consider hazmat fees or raise fees whenever you remove amalgams or suspect amalgams under old crowns. This costs more money, so you have to have a fee for it. You can either raise your fees to cover it or just charge a fee for any time you're doing mercury removal. I just do a mercury protection fee, I call it, for my patients. And I think currently I'm charging, I think it's $150 or $175. Maddie's up about 300 something. Not sure what Dave's doing, but just don't lose money on doing this. You cannot just start adding this. You're going to be spending maybe $30 to $50 in materials, depending on which ones you use, and it's going to take you a little longer to do it for putting all that on. Now, we found yesterday we've got some new news, and this is definitely hot off the presses. Dave did a barrier study when we wanted to see how good these materials were in protecting us from vapor. So we put the mercury down, or Dave did, put the mercury down in the lower chamber. Top one? Mercury's in the top one. Okay. Yes, it is. I'm sorry. Mercury's in the top one, the barrier's in the middle, and chamber 2, and measured with 2 analyzers during the whole time. And then divided the bottom by the top. Okay. Okay. And develop a quotient of the mercury vapor for the scrubs. And so what we found, y'all see that okay? All right, I can't see it, so my glasses, let me see if I can walk around here. All right, so we found that the bigger the number here, the better the protection is. The bar goes around. So here are all the different materials. So you can see that a non-latex dam with HGX cream on it was here, and if you didn't put the cream on it, it's where is it? It's down here, isn't it? Latex down, latex down here. That's a double one. And way down, where the hell is it? There it is right there. Look how much better you get when you just put that HGX cream on it, okay? Look at how double gloves with HGX cream is better than single gloves to protect you. I haven't been doing that because we just got this. Look how crappy Tyvek is for vapor. Now Tyvek's really good for particulate, as most of these materials are probably great for particulate, but vapor is not so good. So found out our best things for vapor are basically plastic lined gowns, like surgical gowns. So here's all the materials and where we are now. Now, I may keep using Tyvek, I don't know. I may try some other gowns, but I like being totally covered up. So most of the surgical gowns go to the knee, and you still got some socks and legs showing. So maybe they make some pants and gowns. Yes, sir. Yeah, it does. And they are. They are. A little bit better. We didn't do painter's plastic. Painter's plastic might be the best thing. Wrap yourself up in painter's plastic. I don't know. But we do know that you need to have better protection, barrier protection. Think about the particles you cannot see. We've always known we don't want to breathe them. Can we have our exposure to be zero in that operatory? We'd like it to be. If we could find the perfect non-permeable material that wouldn't let vapor through at all, then maybe that's a possibility. But we want our exposure, our team's exposure, your patient's exposure to be as close to zero as possible. I want to thank the IAOMT for sponsoring the first part of this study. And we also like to thank the IABDM for sponsoring the barrier part of the study. These studies are not inexpensive to run. Publication, we're hoping to submit our first paper in 2 weeks for publication, and we may submit maybe three papers out of all the data that we've got. Thank you.